Live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you for joining us. We are coming to you with breaking news regarding a settlement that was brought for the Oregon Department of Human Services. And we're going to be talking about this right now. This is part of a Fox 12 Investigates coverage that we've had here going for quite a while, being led by Adrian Thomas right here. And Adrian, there's a lot to unpack in this. This has to do with some allegations from Oregon foster youth that obviously a lot has happened since then to where we have this settlement coming today. We want to give you what this is, what this means, but to give a little bit of the backstory in case people don't know, would you mind filling us in on how this investigation started and what some of the things were that were alleged?
Well, as far as this settlement with ODHS goes, this is a federal court case that is several years in the making, and it was set to go to trial this Friday, but they reached a settlement today to avoid going to trial. And pretty much what this class action lawsuit in federal court was all about is a group of foster children, and their representatives. Since a lot of them were minors when the case was initially filed, they had adult representatives standing in for them, plus their attorneys. Basically, what they alleged is that the Department of Human Services in Oregon violated their constitutional rights to equal protection when they were in DHS's custody. So a lot of this had to do just with the type of foster homes or group homes they were placed in, unsafe environments, different things like that. And all of this trial has been obviously, well, not a trial, but this case, there's been lots of back and forth between the state and the foster children and their attorneys for several years, and with the pandemic it really delayed everything. But the case was finally reaching a point this spring where it was potentially going to go to trial, but they did reach a settlement today. And pretty much what that settlement involves is that a neutral party will be appointed, somebody who has no experience with the state of Oregon or hasn't had any connection with the foster children involved in the lawsuit, but somebody who has a good knowledge of federal oversight and child welfare. And basically what they'll do is they'll be a neutral party that will evaluate everything in Oregon's Department of Human Services as it pertains to foster care and identify the gaps and set goals for ODHS to meet in the years to come.
And, talking about this settlement, but even going back to some of the investigations that you did too, I mean, and if people want to follow up on those, they're at kptv.com. There's some really, very intense interviews that you had there speaking to some of these former foster children on some of the different things that they experienced. And it seems that this, based on that, I guess, can I ask you just, your thoughts and opinions on this as you went through and started interviewing some of these kids? How prevalent do you feel this was throughout the system?
Well, we initially, in our reporting, specifically on abuse and neglect allegations within the foster care system in Oregon, we we basically wanted to take a deeper dive into this issue several months ago. And, the news about this federal lawsuit was still kind of quiet at the time. Our reporting, on the the foster care system and issues within the system, that was something, we wanted to just look at individually ourselves because, years ago, 2016, 2017, we did a lot of reporting. Fox 12 did. I wasn't here then, but other reporters did coverage on issues within the foster care system and foster children being placed in hotels. And, we were, our team then was one of the people or some of the reporters to break that story. So we just, earlier this year wanted to just revisit kind of where things were at with the foster care system. There were pretty scathing audits done in 2018 and 2019 of DHS and as it pertains to foster care system, specifically with abuse and neglect allegations. And through our reporting and through public records that we were able to find, we found that from 2019 through 2023, a good majority of abuse and neglect allegations by foster children alleging abuse or neglect by their foster parents, most of those allegations went unfounded after investigations. It was 88%, and the data set that we had was over 2,400 different investigations. And we tracked down several different foster youth. Some of them were in care during that time period in our data set. Some of them weren't, but a lot of them, the overarching theme with them, with their stories, was they spoke up a lot to caseworkers and or to trusted adults or trusted friends in the community, and they all claim that DHS did not keep them safe, and um, that was kind of the overarching theme in our reporting, and it was some pretty powerful stories.
Yeah, bringing those, those allegations and bringing that to, apparently not receiving any kind of anything from DHS for those. So looking at this settlement now, and just to go into that just a little bit more. So you mentioned there's a neutral party that'll be appointed that's not associated with the state of Oregon or with any of the foster youth or former foster youth. How are they going to determine who that neutral party is, and do you know how far out that is before we start
So
seeing something from that?
the deadline for that is by the end of this month, and both the state and the plaintiffs' attorneys, the foster children's attorneys, have to, agree on someone. And if they can't agree on someone, then each side will submit nominees, to the federal court in Eugene, and the judge there will, hear arguments for different neutral parties, and then the judge would make that decision. But the ideal situation is two parties agreeing on somebody that can be hired to essentially be this just provide independent oversight and consultation of childcare, foster care within Oregon's Department of Human Services, and really have unfettered access to records and policies and staffing situations, and really just be somebody who can identify the gaps and push to make change, and basically have this is essentially federal oversight here of Oregon's Department of Human Services. So it's it's not like it's when we hear of like settling out of court, we always think of like large financial awards going to people or groups of people, but that's not really the case here. It's more so basically a federally ordered evaluation and recommending changes for Oregon's Department of Human Services, and it's going to continue to be monitored by this neutral party, by the court, and in the hopes of making improvements.
I mean, that's a pretty big job there for whoever this is, whatever this neutral party is, to oversee all of that, and to actually dig in and see what has happened, and then recommend those changes. You mentioned, one thing that I think a lot of people do think of when you think of settlement is like a large, financial payout to somebody. So looking at it, it seems like this neutral party is going to be analyzing things going forward once they're in place, seeing what happened, but then fixing things going forward. But as far as these foster youth that made these allegations before, and all of these claims that went, as you mentioned, unfounded, what happens there? Is there anything for some of those from those people who made these claims?
In terms of the foster youth involved in the case, or just anybody who's had experience with the system?
Really anybody, I guess, going backward before, previous to this moment when this neutral party starts making these changes.
It's more so about this neutral party, pushing to make these changes, basically, reforming how, or, assessing and then potentially reforming how the foster care system operates in Oregon. And it's significant in that this played out in federal court. This could have been a very lengthy, frankly, very public and intense trial had it gone to trial. um, because you would have lots of, you know,
Yeah,
former foster youth, their advocates sharing their stories in court.
I'm sure
And
very
then,
personal things too. That
yeah, and then folks from DHS, um, basically, going on the stand and defending their records. So this settlement is significant, and coming up in our evening newscasts beginning at 5 p.m., we'll have more of a breakdown of this, but then we'll also share the staggering number in legal fees that the state of Oregon paid out to a private law firm in Portland to help them with the defense. And it's a pretty shocking number when you see it.
So there's that number, and then I'm assuming, based on this settlement, that probably the state will be paying for the neutral party for the oversight.
Yes.
Is that part
The
of it as
state,
well?
the state will be paying the salary of the neutral party. Mm.
Which I'm sure will be substantial, as we mentioned, because of just the massive amount of work that's going to be needed for a job like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have that info again, as you mentioned, coming up here later on, or on our newscast this evening. Anything else that you think is important for people to know? I mean, this really is a big thing. I guess one other question I had too is: has ODHS made any kind of a statement since this settlement was announced?
They have not. They have not. This literally just happened this
Yeah.
afternoon. We have not heard anything from ODHS at this point.
Okay. Going back to my other question, anything else that you think is important for people to know just about this as a whole? I mean, you've covered a lot, so.
Yeah, I think just the key points is, this neutral party will help out with basically it's all about improving the quality of foster care. So the neutral party is going to review ODHS's practices of documenting, abuse of how ODHS documents abuse and neglect in foster care. They'll work with ODHS to assess like the timeliness of like foster care placements and the initial assessments of children when they enter foster care, and what their needs are, and what kind of case plans they have. Some of the court documents showed that in recent years, not every child that entered foster care in Oregon had an initial assessment done and case plan established within 2 months. So it's really kind of looking at the system piece by piece, and the practices that are in place, and finding out what's not working and trying to make it better.
And having that power from this neutral party against to recommend those changes, but having access to everything
Yes.
to have those changes happen. Well,
Yeah.
Adrian, thank you very much, for joining us here just to go over this, because this is a really, really big settlement. This is a big decision here that just happened, or what's going on with this, and important for everybody, and obviously affects a lot of lives here, both in the past from what has happened to see this actually these changes to come forward, and then all these people going forward, all these foster kids and everybody involved. You mentioned more coverage later on today. Can you just let us know when and where people should tune in for that?
Yeah, coming up on our newscast at 5 and 6 p.m. And then stories will be online at kptv.com as well.
Yeah, and as we mentioned at the top too, if you'd like to watch some of Adrian's pieces and the coverage that we have at kptv.com, we have that all there as well. Everything leading up, some very in-depth coverage and interviews with some of the foster youth, and so a lot to examine right there too, for everything that led up to this. Well, Adrian, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and all the work that you do for this. And for everybody watching, this is Fox 12 Now. This is part of what we get to do, is bring you breaking news anytime between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. outside of our other newscasts. This is where we'll have that, and we get to do a little bit of a deeper dive with our reporters like Adrian here. So our next newscast is at 4 p.m. If there's breaking news between now and then, we'll be right here with that as well. So thank you for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.